Hi, I'm Dr. Kylie Dodsworth, and I'd like to talk to you about gluten intolerance. So you might have heard, or you might have, gluten intolerance, and it seems to be far more prevalent these days that people are complaining about the fact that when they eat products that are wheat based, that they can get some symptoms like bloating or stomach pain or loose bowels. And we often point the finger at gluten, which is a protein found within the wheat. Now, gluten can be an issue for people, and for a lot of us it actually is a bit of an issue. It's like a spectrum where we have a little bit, we can tolerate it, but if we get more and more and more, we start to have issues. So the question is why? Why are we reacting to wheat this way? And the answer is complicated, as many things are. So one factor is that here, particularly in Australia where I'm from, we're a wheat growing country, and our wheat has been selected over the decades, the centuries, to actually be a high yielding protein based grain. So the heavier the head of grain, the more the farmer gets when they take it to market. So they sell it by weight. So the heavier the protein, the more money they make, so they call that a good seed, and so they'll use that to reseed for the next crop of grain. Now, the reality is that the more protein, the more gluten it has in it, the more we start to get some problems. So gluten acts a bit like glue. I call it gluey gluten sometimes because it helps to bind things and stick things together. And so in our baking, we use wheat for the gluten to help hold it together. There's gluten in things like potatoes as well for gnocchi and stuff like that. So gluten's a bit of a glue. It's also used as a thickener in a whole range of foods as well. So gluey gluten is in our foods, and also bakers often will add some extra gluten to try to make our muffins and our bread all spongy and moist, and we love the look of it, we love the taste of it. But the reality is we're loading and loading and loading more and more of this protein into our gut and into our system. So gluten can be an issue whereby people are literally allergic to it, and that's what we call celiac disease. And with celiac disease, our immune system's made antibodies or fighting cells against this gluten, and that can then set up problems in our body that are quite significant if we are eating gluten. So somebody with celiac disease really has to be completely gluten-free, otherwise their immune system's hyperactive and they can get a whole raft of long-term problems from that, not just digestive issues, but autoimmune conditions, osteoporosis from lack of absorption, malnutrition in lots of different ways. So for people with celiac disease, it's a serious business and they have to be completely gluten-free. That's only a small percentage of the population. The rest of us are, to a degree, gluten intolerant. So it's not an allergy, it's an intolerance, which means we can have to be mindful how much we have, and we all have our own threshold with that. Now, that's not necessarily about antibodies or immune reaction. It's about how that protein interacts with the wall of our gut. And what newer studies have shown is that one of the things that gluten does is it stimulates the production of something called zonulin, Z-O-N-U-L-I-N. Now this is really interesting because in our gut wall, the cells that line the intestine are joined together with really tight connections called a tight junction. I picture that a bit like super glue, so the cells are stuck together. And we do that deliberately so that what's inside our gut can only get into the blood by going through the cell, and our cell could be selective about what it picks up and transports through. When we have too much zonulin, it literally dissolves the superglue. And so those tight junctions get weakened, the cells come apart a little bit, and we lose that selectivity of what gets from the gut into the blood. And that's what we call a leaky gut, or increased permeability of the gut wall. So we get things coming through that we wouldn't normally let through. That can be bacteria, that can be waste products, that can be proteins and other foods that are not fully digested yet get through, and then our immune system sitting on the other side of that wall just going, what is that, what is that, what is that, and trying to protect us from all these things that are coming in, and we get an inflammatory response. So gluten is not just about celiac disease and allergy, it's about zonulin production. The other thing with wheat is that a lot of wheat is grown and sprayed with something called glyphosate. Now glyphosate is what's in Roundup. Now, many European countries have actually banned the use of Roundup. It's still used in the US, it's still used in Australia. And our wheat is literally saturated in this Roundup, which is a pesticide and a herbicide to try and protect that grain so it can grow without competition. Now, that gets into the grain itself, and then when we eat these grains, it's actually affecting the bacteria in our own gut, our healthy bacteria that we need and rely on for digestion. So reactions to wheat can be about disrupting the gut flora. It can be about weakening the tight junctions through the zonulin. It can be about irritating immune function as a result of that. It can actually be about true celiac disease. So we need to be mindful about how much wheat we're having, and being wheat-free can be, for many people, a healthier way to go. If we're not having wheat, we need to think, well, what else can we have? So other grains, including things like quinoa, a range of different grains. There's lots of gluten-free products available these days. Be mindful about going to corn. Corn has its very own irritations for the gut, so it's not really a great substitute. So we want to look at non-corn based alternatives. But in essence, if we have more fruit and vegetables, if we have nuts and seeds, if we have good healthy proteins, natural oils, we don't need too much of these grains in our diet. So there's a whole lot of information out there about how to minimize grains in your diet, and wheat really is the one to be watching as the main issue. So gluten intolerance, it's actually a real thing, and it's out there and it affects most of us. So be really mindful of that, minimize your exposure, listen to your body, and then see if we can get that digestion to work better for you. At the end of the day, you want to be about creating better health for you. So I'm Dr. Kylie Dodsworth. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.